Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is John Hardie, Deputy Director of the FDD's Russia program. John, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Last week, you and I talked about the evolution of the United States' relationship with Ukraine as we passed the third-year anniversary of Russia's invasion into Ukraine. And since then, so much has changed because on Friday, we saw a really intense, explosive White House meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, President Trump, as well as Vice President JD Vance. So I do want to set the scene here and then get your reaction. So about 40 minutes into the meeting, Vice President JD Vance interjected to respond to a question on diplomacy. From there, he was complimenting President Trump's approach to Russia and then criticizing Biden's. And Zelensky responded by asking JD Vance this question, quote, "What kind of diplomacy, JD, are you speaking about?" And then he explained from his perspective how Russia has been a bad faith actor to Ukraine for almost a decade, or for over a decade, rather. And then from there, it really exploded into 10 minutes of chaos with President Trump eventually jumping in. What are your thoughts on what we saw on Friday?
Well, I think without trying to litigate exactly who did what wrong, I'd say both sides could have handled that meeting a lot better. And it's unfortunate because we really do need unity right now to confront Russia and to get a good peace deal. So I hope President Zelensky is made clear he's ready to move forward. I hope the White House will do the same and be guided by U.S. interests and not emotion as they review options for things like military aid for Ukraine.
I think that, and I was explaining this earlier to you, not explaining, rather saying it, that when you watch these meetings open to the press with the President of the United States and the White House with various world leaders, I mean, you've seen them time and time again where it's just more of an exercise in politeness. They're essentially saying, hey, it's so great for you to be here. Thank you so much for joining me. And then when they go into their closed door meetings, that's when negotiations reportedly begin. They could get more testy from there, but it's away from the press. Where do you think, can you pinpoint exactly where it went wrong? And you said both sides could have done and handled things differently. What do you think they could have handled differently, and what would you have wanted to see?
Well, I think going forward, it'd probably be wise to keep, the publicly televised remarks to a minimum. And, obviously President Trump likes to riff in front of cameras. It's his prerogative. If I were to be advising President Zelensky, I'd say, next time, if you do have an opportunity to meet the President of the United States, President Trump, probably just want to emphasize gratitude, as President Zelensky has done many times before, and, go behind the scenes in behind closed door meetings to kind of, hash out your disagreements or your different disagreements or your differences, your position on things like security guarantees and whether Putin, if that can be trusted. I think, from the White House's perspective, they are interpreting what President Zelensky is saying as a lack of commitment to peace. I don't think that's Zelensky's position. In fact, no one wants peace more than the Ukrainians. I think his point was, and it's a correct point, that, given Putin's track record, he cannot be trusted just to honor any ceasefire deal. Therefore, security guarantees are a must. I think that, there are plenty within in the United States, including within the Trump administration, who understand that. But these sorts of discussions would probably be best had behind closed doors.
I think the moment where you saw President Trump jump in and really explode was Ukrainian President Zelensky essentially said, you have an ocean in between Russia and Europe and the United States, but you will eventually feel this. President Trump said, don't tell us what to feel, and then exploded from there for about 10 minutes. And I've been watching the president for over a decade. I've been reporting on him for years now, and I've never seen him quite that angry. Do you think Zelensky had a point that the United States is eventually going to feel this? And why do you think that made President Trump so angry?
Well, I think President Zelensky is correct that Vladimir Putin cannot be trusted. He's violated pretty much every agreement he's signed with the United States and other countries, including ceasefire agreements with Ukraine. And like I said, solid security guarantees are therefore really necessary, and it remains to be seen exactly what form that might take. Although, from what the Trump administration says, they've made clear they want it to be European led. And I think for the United States, one of the reasons we have an interest in a durable peace in Ukraine is precisely because we do not want this war to begin again, and with all the disruption to the U.S. economy and the global economy that it caused, with all the potential for escalation and risks in that nature, and also if it were to hopefully it'll never happen, but if it did, and widen to involve European countries, absolutely the United States could be on the hook as part of its Article 5 NATO commitment. And so, we really do have an interest in durable peace, and I hope President Trump and his administration will see that and work toward some solid security guarantees for Ukraine.
America wasn't the only one watching this on Friday unfold. Neither was Ukraine. The entire world had eyes on this. And after that meeting, European leaders came out in droves supporting Ukraine, saying, "We stand with Ukraine." We saw after Friday, over the weekend, Ukrainian President Zelensky visited 10 Downing Street, and Keir Starmer embraced him in a big hug. I'm curious, what does Russia think when watching this? Does this embolden Putin at all?
Well, the Kremlin is certainly delighted to see this sort of disunity between the United States and Ukraine. And I have no doubt they'll seek to exploit that by trying to kind of drive or deepen that wedge between the two countries. So that could look like the Russians continuing to dangle economic interests that U.S. companies could have in Russia, for example, and they could try to accelerate kind of the one-on-one meetings with the United States that exclude Ukraine, exclude European allies, and kind of try to like I said, deepen that separation between the across the pond.
I'm curious, is there a route to peace? Is there a possibility of peace, lasting peace between Ukraine, between Russia, without the United States' involvement at all?
Well, I think, like I just keep harping on this one point, security guarantees were really necessary. I don't think this war, whatever agreement comes out of these negotiations is going to solve the fundamental issue at stake in this war, which is, does Russia have the self-declared right to subjugate Ukraine, or is Ukraine allowed to be a free country and associate with the West and the Western institutions that it wants to? And so, we might get some sort of peace deal. Hopefully we will, coming out of these negotiations. I don't think that issue is going to be resolved. And so I think that really sets the stage for a third war, perhaps after some period of rearmament. And so, therefore, the imperative for security guarantees is really important. And, we've had a number of European countries say that they're ready to step up and not only increase defense spending, but also potentially put boots on the ground and other sort of capabilities to help deter the Russians. And so right now they're asking for a U.S. contribution. We'll see what direction President Trump wants to go in that. But I think clarity sooner rather than later would be useful to help move those European discussions forward. Right now, President Trump's position is essentially, let's get the deal done and then we'll worry about all that. That's understandable, but I think that's probably not the right way to go. You want to have clarity from the U.S. and kind of a shared vision of where you want these negotiations to end up, so you can set your negotiating strategy accordingly and try to work toward that outcome.
President Trump on Friday, after that meeting, there was supposed to be that minerals deal signed. That obviously didn't happen. President Trump kicked Zelensky out of the White House. We saw White House staffers eating the lunch meant for the Ukrainian people that were there. And Trump essentially said, come back when you're ready for peace. It doesn't seem like you're ready for peace now. And then that deal could be signed. Over the weekend, Zelensky did say that he was ready to sign that deal, but also said, to your point, that a ceasefire without security guarantees is dangerous for Ukraine. So where do we go from here? How is there going to be a reset where both sides can come to the table here in a way that's not explosive like we saw on Friday?
Right. Well, I think, like I said earlier, the White House is going to have to be guided by U.S. interests, not emotions. And I think, they've also made clear, though, that they want President Zelensky to publicly apologize and declare his commitment to peace. And so just, without commenting on whether Zelensky owes an apology, I think realistically he's probably going to have to give one if he wants to try to repair this relationship with the U.S., which is, of course, critical for Ukraine's security.
This is really a 180 from President Biden. We know from reporting in 2022, NBC reported that privately in a phone call with Zelensky, President Biden raised his voice, lost his temper a little bit when Zelensky asked for more money after President Biden already said that the American people were being quite generous. I am curious, what do you think that this display we saw on Friday says about President Trump's overall foreign policy as he starts his second term?
Right. Well, I think, or at least I'm hopeful that that specific incident in the Oval Office will be a one-off. I think it's clear that President Trump wants to end this war. He said that numerous times, and I think for him that's the overarching concern, and kind of the other questions such as security guarantees, such as the specific contours of a deal. Those kind of take a back seat, whereas, of course, for the Ukrainians, those are central issues. And, a peace in and of itself isn't necessarily seen as sufficient. It could potentially be dangerous if it's kind of a bad peace. So, I hope the two sides will sort of come together. But, the really first step that has to happen is putting this business behind us, getting that minerals deal signed, getting the relationship back on track. I think the Europeans have played a really constructive role here in kind of getting together, not only pledging to step up what they're doing, but also kind of outlining a way to potentially bridge that gap with the Trump administration and enable a reconciliation.
I know what you're looking for next is that minerals deal being signed, is a reset in this relationship, getting it back on course here. I am curious, though, when you're looking at this event that happened on Friday, really, I mean, it sent shockwaves around the world. What message do you think that America is sending to the rest of this world based on that display in the White House?
Right. Well, I think the message that President Trump's team wants to send is that what the America is not going to be taken advantage of. That's sort of a central thesis to Trump's foreign policy. I think what they need to be careful about is sending the message that America is going to abandon its allies and partners such as European countries and Ukraine. On many occasions, they've even in that same Oval Office presser with Zelensky, Trump said, we're still committed to NATO. But when you have these sort of high profile clips that go viral and kind of drown out those more sober messages, well, your kind of overarching intent or your message can get lost. So I think we need to have a little bit more disciplined messaging, and frankly that goes for the Ukrainians as well. Many of their engagements with the United States have not been handled very well, just from a messaging standpoint. And so I would hope for more discipline as they, try to engage in these public forums.
To your point, everyone's talking about those last 11 minutes over the first 40. But John, I appreciate you coming on here, breaking it down. And there is a lot that remains to be seen. And as things flesh out with this relationship, with the minerals deal, I hope you come back on and join me and break it down. John Hardie, per usual, thank you for your expertise.
Yeah, thank you.